All right, so diagramming, a way to present complex industrial processes simply. First, some introduction. I'm Łukasz. I work with diagrams for over 13 years. I'm a developer, so actually I create diagram interfaces in different libraries, and I'm going to talk a bit in a while about those libraries. And with me is Mateusz.
So hi everyone, I'm Mateusz. I'm also a software developer. I think I've been working with diagramming interfaces for about 7 years since I joined Synergy. And yeah, mostly with libraries like GoJS and React. And yeah, so yeah, we'll be quite happy to share a little bit of knowledge about diagrams with you today.
As Mateusz said, we work for Synergy Codes, and Synergy Codes is data visualization agency. We mainly work with diagrams. It is our main specialization, and we did like 200 projects already for our clients. So a lot of different diagrams, among many different industries. All right, so let's start. Actually, at the beginning, let's think about data visualization and what do we actually visualize with data visualization. Different kind of numbers. We just put numbers into shapes like bars, dots. We transform raw data into something human-readable. But what if we need to understand is a system? Yes, data visualization usually is about what to visualize or when something happened, whereas diagramming, it is more like how something works. So the challenge isn't just to see the output data, but to understand the logic, the structure, the relationships between the data. Yeah, here we can see some grid, which explains how we understand the division between the data visualization and diagramming. As I said, diagramming more like how it works. Its input is more like system, logic, flow, dependencies, and users. I would also say that analysts, data scientists, but from our experience, the diagrams are mainly used by engineers, product designers, architects. But let's see some real example. So this is the diagram we had to visualize properly. So we had one client who wanted to visualize their cloud architecture, like hundreds or even tens of thousands of different entities in cloud with a lot of relationships between each other. And we had to visualize it properly. And it is the diagram which was visualized without any techniques. So we just placed everything on the diagram and used auto layouting algorithm, which could handle this amount of data. Like this is the tens, I would say 20 or 30,000 of nodes and edges. So actually most of algorithms won't handle it properly in a browser. So we had to try to play with this diagram. So what happened next? We decided that we should auto layout just nodes, just to see what are the groups of those nodes. So whether it is possible to put some nodes into the collapsible sections, so we can collapse the groups, so the diagrams is smaller. It was possible, but still the edges are quite a mess. I mean, it looks like hairball. So we had to do some techniques, the diagramming techniques, to lower the number of edges and nodes. So what we did, we wanted to find how to group objects together, not by physical attribute, like this object belongs to this object, but by some similarity. Maybe we can find some logic in the data which helps us to place those objects together in the same area so we can enclose them together. Then we could collapse those groups. We wanted to find out what auto layout we should use to position those objects in a way that it is possible to render it in Canvas in the browser, and how to deal with this number of edges, because those edges were the biggest challenge. So I would like to show you the final result. It's going to be an animation. This is the same data. So what we can see here are those purple groups. Those purple objects are groups which we introduced for objects with similarities. We merged the edges together which are connected to the same groups. And we show the real edges only when we select object on the diagram. And some objects were hidden inside collapsible groups. For the groups, we use just grid layout, which is very fast. And the main layout was just run on the main level. And it was the layered dgraph layout, which handles at most 3,000 objects. All right, so it was just one example. So one industry which we helped, but actually every industry has its own language of complexity. So we would like to show you more use cases we had in the past around diagrams. So let's start with schematic editor. So we had a client from Canada who wanted to visualize at the end electrical grid of Texas on the same diagram in browser. So of course it wasn't possible. But let's take one step backwards, and let's say what we resolved at the beginning. So at the beginning, they didn't have any visualization. They just used Simulink for creating electrical schematics, but they wanted to customize it so they can put their own data from their own product, and they can run simulations inside the project. So actually, we had to create such a diagram in which they can put their data in the palette on the left-hand side, then drag and drop objects on the screen, create a schematic, and edit its properties on the right-hand side. We had to introduce some concepts like diagrams in diagrams. So there were subsystems. They were like portals. So when you double-click on the subsystem, you could open another diagram, in which you could create a schematic. Then you could just go back to the main level, and this diagram was represented by just a rectangle. Thanks to that, and thanks to the virtualization, so we rendered only things which should be visible right now on the screen, and things off screen shouldn't be rendered. It was possible to render millions of objects. All right, so let's move on to the next example.
All right, and I'll jump in here and talk about another use case that we had for diagramming. This one is also related to industry, to CAD drawings and so on. So this was for AV industry, right? The actual use case is when you think of like integrators within AV industry, for example, for things like stadiums, where you have thousands of, I don't know, speakers on the venue connected with hundreds of cables, maybe some cameras and so on and so forth, right? So for one of our clients, they were actually, well, having needs that, well, they were fulfilling by writing schematics in AutoCAD or very similar to, right? And the main problem was, okay, for each of their jobs, it was like weeks of work of actual engineers building those schematics in CAD. Even if they were building them from existing blocks, right, that were there because they're pretty repeatable. Most of the devices are similar, right? Getting the entire project and everything was quite time-consuming and difficult. And also when it comes to navigating this data, actually, well, there's only so much that can fit on a page, especially if you're preparing this to be printed, right? So you had those wires that now have some flags at the end that point to other pages, and it's really difficult to navigate all this. But the data is already there, right? Whenever they were, anyway, preparing a schema like this, they know that, okay, how many different speakers and everything they need to buy. So the data is already there in Excel form or any other one. So with that, we've learned, okay, we can actually represent this as an automated diagram within a browser. And yeah, with this interactive diagramming workspace, we've achieved a lot. So, well, first of all, like time savings of, those engineers not having to write those CAD files, create those CAD files from scratch, but also improved user experience by things like being able to search and navigate the different elements within a browser, maybe for like troubleshooting on the venues, like where you need to find out just two devices and a connection between them, you can find this in a system and display this on the graph. Under the hood, we've used one of the libraries for diagramming, but well, we'll get to technology in a bit. And yeah, they were applying things like essentially layered layout allow us to get this good view. One thing that was, I think, important there because it was also not feasible to display really all those devices at once, but we've provided the like grouping of the devices, which allowed to significantly like group maybe by a room or sometimes, but like within the page you have, when you have a connection going to another place, you can still within the UI have something like a simple double click operation that will point you to a next device. Now, next example, right? Not only industry, but things like, well, we have here, it's, well, basically an org chart. Probably everyone here have seen one way or another. So for this use case, this was in legal context, I think for analysis of corporate structures, like who is subsidiary of who, how organizations are connected in terms of ownership, etc. Right? That was the case. Once again, a client already had this process done somehow, right? I think initially they were using tools like Microsoft Visio or something like that for doing those diagrams manually, but it had a lot of drawbacks, right? Once again, maybe something little changed within the organization structure, and if you had those graphs created, you need to redo them, right? There was also a lot of manual work on figuring out, okay, what data do I actually want to represent on those charts? So once again, diagramming came here with help. So basically, we could load the data about the entities, enable like automatic layout. So this is a layered graph, and yeah, enable additional features like searching those specific entities, filtering by some specific properties of these entities, basically to allow users to quickly find the information. With such interactive diagramming tool, it was also much easier to show only the relevant data, right? Maybe for purpose of one analysis, we only needed to display the entity name. Maybe for another one, we needed some more detailed information. Once again, such tool allowed to achieve this process much quicker. And one last thing here is that, well, with things like export features, through this tool, we are able to provide even a way to export this for like old users that were used to doing this in Visio, right? So we could still export it and basically import this new drawing into their existing workflow, right? So nobody felt like they're forced to change their workflows that much, this interoperability. Okay, but is diagramming only about representing like this complex industrial business processes, right? Well, not necessarily. Let me show you one last example, right? So another project that we did related to diagramming was actually, well, related to story mapping for writers. So we can think of people writing books, maybe screenplays, when, well, still they are working with some processes and relations, right? Whereas previously we were talking more about maybe corporate entities or physical entities that are somehow connected. In storytelling, there are also connections. So like maybe different characters are interacting with each other within a chapter of a book, or, well, together they're following some storyline. And, well, there are already tools, creative tools for writers, but typically it is difficult that the actual writing process and this mind map, sketching, creative processes are separated, right? You have pretty good diagramming tools for writing mind maps and all that stuff, but they were not connected to the actual writing. So the idea here was, hey, let's combine this. And on one hand, we had this in-browser text editor where you can write the book, but at the same time, you can have your storyboards right next to it, and they can reference each other. So, well, maybe a chapter in a book is referenced on a diagram. You can just click and navigate to a part of a text. Or maybe there is a character and you have a board where you are sketching, okay, what is the connections to other characters, right? And you could like think of like on a Wikipedia page, you're getting a reference to another article, right? So here, once again, with this changing just even though the result might be the text for a writer, in the process, it is sometimes useful to visualize them. And by combining the diagramming here, we were able to, well, provide, we think, quite a useful tool for them. So now let's probably switch to technology.
Yes. You already seen that all of those products, they were created for the end user. So the client, someone who created the software, they couldn't use just existing products. So can you hear me right now? Yeah, okay. They couldn't use existing products like a SaaS versions because they wanted to ship their products to their end users, and it had to be fully customized. So actually they had to create the diagram from scratch. So what kind of library, what kind of technology we could use to create such diagram? So probably the first library which comes to your mind is D3, especially that it was already brought today. Yes, and of course in D3 it is possible to create any diagramming tool because D3 is so low level that actually any data visualization is possible with D3. The issue is, as I said, D3 is quite low level. So if you want to have on your diagram, drag and drop from the palette, linking objects together, rotation, resizing, grouping objects together, when selecting, editing some properties, maybe, I don't know, zoom in, zoom out, maybe panning, snapping of objects via some steps, it becomes harder and harder to achieve it with D3. So if not D3, what we could use instead? Those are libraries we use in Synergy codes to create diagrams. GoJS, React-Flow, and NGDiagram. So GoJS is the only enterprise library which is paid, and React-Flow and NGDiagram are open source. So GoJS, it is library, very mature one. It was created in late, I would say, 2008, probably. and it actually covers a lot of needs about diagramming. The thing is, it is so mature and it is so extensive that it is hard to learn. Nowadays, in our company, it takes like 3 months to learn this library good enough to create any project with it. So it is mainly used for more demanding projects requiring a lot of performance. On the other hand, we have React Flow. Of course, React Flow, it is written for React, so mainly used in React framework, but some people try to use it in other frameworks too. React Flow is very basic. Like it gives you nodes, edges, groups, and that's it. It doesn't even give you a copy paste, but still it is much easier to use React Flow than D3 if you just create diagram. And the main, I will do the comparison between GoJS and React Flow in a bit. And NGDiagram, it is very similar library to React Flow, but created for Angular. And also, I'm going to talk about this library in a bit. So what are the main differences between the libraries? The first thing you should consider is the rendering engine. So what the library uses to show the diagram. The GoJS uses Canvas, the HTML5 Canvas. Thanks to that, it is very performant. Like you can render hundreds of thousands of objects on the screen. The downside is it is Canvas, so you cannot use any HTML, CSS to present data. You just need to draw it on the canvas. And GoJS gives you the tools for drawing those elements on canvas. It is much easier than just drawing with the HTML5 commands, but still you need to learn it. Whereas React Flow, it just uses React. So any object on the screen is just a React component. It doesn't require a lot of knowledge to just create first diagram. I would say even in first day, you can create a pretty good diagram. And as I said, the other main difference is React Flow is MIT license, so free of charge, whereas GoJS is fully commercial and you have to buy the license once you go to the live environment. All right, so there is also NGDiagram. I have it also here on my back because it is our library. So since there is GoJS, which is very broad diagramming library for any kind of framework because it was written just in JS, and React Flow is just for React, we decided that yes, since we are so good at diagramming, and in Angular there is no such library as React Flow, we decided that let's create such a library, but let's make it better. I mean, as I said, React Flow is quite basic. GoJS is very large and very mature. So we decided to create something in between. So we want to give more features than React Flow, but it shouldn't be as hard to use as GoJS. Right now, we are at version 0.8. We aim to release 1.0 this year, but we are already stable and use it in some projects. Nowadays, internal ones, but probably next month, we will be ready to ship first production-ready projects for our clients.
All right, but in reality, we've talked about use cases, we've talked about technology, but it's really only half of the picture, right? When we, at least from our perspective, when we're working with those different diagramming projects, right? Having a good technology that can render the diagrams with, good performance, apply proper layouts and so on is only part of the thing. Another piece is actually, providing good UX, right? Good user experience. So for the humans that are actually consumers of that data of these processes, right? So this is a very important thing that we're dealing on daily basis, right? And yeah, there are a couple of challenges within diagramming in terms of UX, like with the cognitive load. In some of the examples that we've shown, like that was one of the main things at the beginning, besides performance when trying to display a couple of thousands of objects. It's just too much to have in our head all at once, right? And to understand anything interesting for it, right? So the figuring out, okay, which elements to show, how to group them to provide this clarity of vision is one very important thing. Another thing comes down to focus and context. So they're kind of related to a previous point, but the idea is to show if we, group too much data, maybe the important information won't be there for the user. So it's about finding a good balance, right? We cannot show everything all at once, but we need to show enough so the information can be useful, like with the architecture diagrams, right? You don't need to see 1,000 links all at once, right? But like you need to understand, okay, where are the main relations? And this is important. You cannot, just hide everything so it just looks nice, because then the actual diagram would serve its main purpose. Now, interaction model. With the diagrams where we allow users, for example, to edit them from drag and drop, or maybe, filter in, filter out, it is very important to design the interactions so they're intuitive, understandable for the user. And like, if we can do something destructive to a diagram, so maybe we can, quickly undo it, right? Especially if we allow users to navigate by themselves, right? And last thing, collaboration. So what we found over the years, these diagrams very often become like a shared model. So more often than not, we're adding like different collaboration features. That's, well, you may all know for different online tools, like, the ability to comment, collaborate with other users in real time on building these visualizations. So, yeah, simplify too much and you lose logic, and show too much and you lose clarity, right? This is one of the things that we've learned. Another challenge besides UX is actually accessibility. So, yeah, we've all been on the web. We know that it can be rough with accessibility on many pages, but at the same time, it is more and more needed to provide good accessibility for your applications. It will of course depend on use case, on, well, who will use it, right? But sometimes from legal perspective, we are obliged to provide this. But, well, even when thinking about our users, right, the good accessibility is important. You can think about challenges like, okay, how you can navigate large complex graphs without a mouse, right? Keyboard navigation is one of the things very prevalent in WCAG standard, but yeah, one of the things, besides even providing the accessibility for itself, I think it's also quite important for, like, it can be quite important for power users, because it's much quicker due to certain things for a keyboard, right? And providing a good accessibility in these terms allows our products that we build to be even more useful. Now, so when it comes to navigating things, yeah, it's difficult for diagrams. There are no like single standard for everything, and you need to think about the cases. It will be probably a different set of navigation features when you're talking about something like an org chart, and completely different when you're talking about knowledge graph, right? Because they'll have completely different structures. You may navigate them differently, right? If it turns out that you have groups and so on, yeah, once again, you need to figure out the interactions. Out of other challenges, things like maintaining focus order and screen reader context. Once again, quite difficult topic, but quite useful, especially for impaired users. And yeah, assuring sufficient contrast and zoomability. So for contrast guidelines, it's funny how often those WCAG guidelines in terms of contrast can go in opposition to things like brand guidelines, when that you need to find good color combinations. And yeah, once again, balancing the at the end, balancing the accessibility with performance and usability, right? So, in the end, it's a balancing act. And yeah, if someone wanted to see, we also have our checklist somewhere on my page in terms of practices of accessibility in diagramming. So you can scan the QR code and check it out. And yeah, with that.
Actually, I wanted also to say a little bit about tools because I already presented GoJS and React Flow and NGDiagram, and actually in some of those tools, accessibility is much easier to achieve than in others. Yeah, you could expect that with libraries which are rendered on Canvas or WebGL, it is much harder to achieve accessibility because they don't support any built-in browser tools. There is no tab index, etc. Nice. Whereas with React Flow and NGDiagram, it is quite easy because still it is rendered on as HTML. So actually, out of the box, you have a basic accessibility, but still you need to think about all of those things which Mateusz said. That it is actually just a 2D space, so it is not single website. All right, so systems stay complex. Diagramming makes the complexity human. So everything we said today shows you that we cannot simplify some system. It has to be complex because it is for complex things. So diagrams need to deal with this complexity. We need to introduce certain techniques to make it more readable for the human. At the same time, we need to manage accessibility. So I would say the diagramming is not an easy thing to do, but quite rewarding one when you finish the diagramming project and users in factories, in different industries use it and they're happy that, yeah, it helped with their work. They don't have to draw things on paper, draw things, use Excel. So the key takeaways you can get from the talk is, first of all, the diagramming is mainly to show how things work. The diagramming also is made for interfaces, so the users don't want to only see the data, they want to create the data using diagrams. The next thing is choosing the correct library always has a trade-off, so it has to be done carefully. And at the end, it is very important to have a proper UX. So the designers are very important in diagramming because I could be the best engineer in the world. I could use the best library in the world. It can be fast, etc., but it can be fully unreadable without the designer. All right, so actually you could get all materials from our talk via this single QR code. And much more, because besides what we explained in here, we do a lot more around diagramming. We also have a YouTube channel around right decisions in IT and diagramming. So we invite you to check it out. If you are a developer, you can play with our NGDiagram library and give us feedback. And actually, that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.